And what does this say, please?
Adolescence equals mind.
Thank you. Got me figured out. Adolescence really refers to the social and emotional changes that go on with kids. So I want to do a little exercise with you all. This is called Brain in the Palm of the Hand. It's by a guy named Daniel Siegel. So everybody hold your hand up in the air like this. So I'm going to, I need both hands. So the palm of your hand and your wrist represents your brain and the brainstem. Cross your thumb over like that. This represents the amygdala. The amygdala is in the midbrain. This is where fight or flight lives. Your emotions hang out in the amygdala. That's it's right there in the middle of the brain. So make a fist like this. So this, that represents your cortex. Back of the cortex, back of your hand is where the senses are. The middle fingers are where movement and motion happens. And then the front part of your hand is the prefrontal cortex. That's what we're really looking at right now, is the prefrontal cortex. So you can put your fist down if you want to. So what goes on in adolescence that's really important to know is we used to think that our brains were really done by about age 5, right? Turns out we go through a second round of brain development. And what happens in adolescence is the brain, right before puberty, the brain gets really, really big. Really big. It's the biggest it will be ever in our kids' lives, in any of our lives. And then this process of pruning starts. So what happens is, in the prefrontal cortex, this is where thinking happens. We think of this as like the CEO of the brain. It's in charge of things like reasoned thinking and emotional control and self-control and impulse control and organizing tasks and that sort of thing. It's about goal and priority setting. That all happens right here in this front part of the brain. So when the brain is developing and this pruning process starts, what's happening is all the neural pathways that have been used a lot, so if your kid's into music or sports or language, or they're into video games or watching TV or texting, those neural pathways are going to be retained, and the rest of it kind of gets cut away. Not fully cut away, but it gets trimmed up. And while that process of trimming and pruning is going on, the prefrontal cortex, which is in charge of reasoned thinking and impulse control and emotions, it can't do its job of being reasonable and thinking, and it's offline. It's offline. Their lids are flipped, and look who's front and center. The midbrain and the amygdala. So the amygdala runs the show. So you may have noticed this in your own family, and we'll talk about it in just a moment. The prefrontal cortex is all about reflection. The amygdala is all about reaction. So if the prefrontal cortex can't do its reflection job, the amygdala is doing its reaction job. So sometimes teenagers have trouble with action consequence thinking. They don't do the if-then thing. Like your if-then example, it's like, if I drink 6 beers, then they don't go to the then. They just go to the, I'll drink 6 beers. Or if I have sex with this person, then they don't go there. They just think, I'm gonna have sex with this person. And some of you may recall some of this going on in your own lives. So I'm wondering, does anybody, does this sound familiar to anybody? This sort of lid flipping kind of thing? Can you give an example? Are you comfortable? No, don't call me out. Don't call me out. Other people, that crazy reaction. And the way it usually looks is like your daughter will come downstairs and you'll say, oh, hey, your hair looks different today. And she says, I can't believe you said that to me. That is the meanest thing anyone's ever done. I look terrible. I can't believe you said that. I look disgusting. I cannot believe this. You are so mean. My day is ruined. And they go storming away. And you're standing there thinking, I'm sorry. What happened? That's a total example of a lid flip in an adolescent. Very common problem. So everybody, before, remember we made the okay sign with Kim and we did this thing where we put the thing on our cheek instead of our chin as told. So that's an example of something called mirror neurons. And this is one of the best strategies that you can engage in with your kids when they're doing this flip out thing. And I have to tell you, I learned about this when my son was 5. He's 11 now. I'm practicing daily, practicing empathy, practicing not flipping my lid. So here's what you can do. When mirror neurons make us mimic, and actually we're wired up to mimic. So right now, all of you, some part of your brain is saying, don't raise that hand, keep that hand down, because you really want to copy me when I stick my hand up in the air. And you all did it too. And I said, how many of you, and I put my hand in the air, you're all like, yeah. Right? Mirror neurons are lovely. So here's your kid with their lid flipped. The best thing you can do is keep your lid not flipped, because when their lid is flipped, your lid flips too. Wants to flip, and most of the time, a lot of us, we just flip on back because we cannot believe how unreasonable and ridiculous our children are being. Our self-talk happens out loud. Whoops. Our self-talk happens out loud. So with their lids flipped, you're going to want to flip your lid. Your job, because your prefrontal cortex, in theory, is fully formed, the pruning's already happened, is to keep your lid from not flipping. So you're gonna have moments where you feel you're like, argh. Then you just say, oh, I'm noticing that I'm starting to feel kind of angry or frustrated. I really don't want to have a fight with you right now. And you're like, I need to take a break. And you go away. You step away. And then your flipped lid chases you down the hall, right? Your job is to remain calm, right? So if you stay calm, they'll get calm. They'll get to calm quicker. Same thing, if you come home and the dishes aren't done or the cat box is not scooped, you will, and you're like, what the heck? I told you. Your lid flips, and what does your kid do? Well, you never give me enough time, blah, blah, blah. They flip right back. So it's a two-way street. So the biggest strategy you can use with your lovely adolescent mind, people, is to stay calm. And it can be one of the hardest things to do ever. And this little lid flippy thing, it works with toddlers, it works with spouses, it works with anybody, it works with people you work with. Because if you flip out, they're going to flip out. If they're already flipped out, you're going to be pulled to flip out back at them. And same with emotional responses. Have you ever noticed how when you're at the movies and there's just a couple of people in the movie theater and one person laughs, people don't really laugh? But if there's a packed movie theater and one or two people laugh and then all of a sudden everybody's laughing, it's the same thing. It's the same process that's going on in our brains. So, don't flip your lid. So, the three big things. Am I normal? Your responsibility is to tell them.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We're getting yes.
Yeah, most likely, yeah. And do we flip our lids? No, we try to stay calm. We do our damnedest to stay calm. And we need to remind them and ourselves that they can't help this lid flipping thing. It's just the way they're wired. It's not an excuse. So if you teach this to your kids and they say, well, I just flipped my lid because I have adolescent brain development going on, you say, I know you do. And that's lovely. However, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. So one last really quick tip is this. Don't try to reason with them when their lids are flipped. Your job is to pull, a lot of what Kathy talked about is really true. Just say, I did it yesterday morning when I was being told how our television, video, game playing, computer time rules are way too rigid and I just don't understand what it's like to be a child in the 21st century. Direct quote. I said, oh, that must be hard. And in my head I'm thinking, oh God, you don't even know how good you have it. So when you make those soothing noises, and he got calm really fast, and I said, hey, why don't we blah? And he went off and did blah blah, whatever it was he was after. So don't try to teach when they're hot or when you're hot. Just make soothing noises, and frankly, Sharon, walk away. And walk away. So if anybody have any questions? Okay, that's it from me.